I'm Shirley Thompson, and I'd like to welcome you to a tour of the Northside Stripers Quilt Show 2002, held at the Jefferson County Fairgrounds. As a brief introduction to the show, I have a few comments. First and foremost, we have all had the pleasure of knowing Betty Prible, and among her many attributes, we as quilters remember her quiet enthusiasm, her subtle sense of humor, her eagerness to learn new things, her generous and helpful ways, and a determination to see a project to its completion. In addition, she had many skills and is an accomplished quilt maker. So in this spirit of remembrance, we, the Northside Stripers Quilt Club, would like to dedicate this show to the memory of our former member and friend, Betty Prible. And with us today are some of her family, her husband, Ron, and daughter, Linda, and Alex, and Nathan.
Right.
Ron?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say, again, what a marvelous show you people have put on. I mean, I've been involved with this back several years ago, and each one is just great. I mean, it's something the town can be really proud of. The Northside Stripers Quilt Club is, couldn't get it all out, but have always done a marvelous job. You have a wonderful quilt show here, and I know it takes a lot of work to do it. And so I want to thank you for that, because I think it's just marvelous what you people have done. And I know you and Joanne, Fritz, and Judy Herzog have been quite a bit of leadership in trying to see that this goes on, you know what I mean? So appreciate it very, very much. And I know that all the ladies in the club take part in this thing and do a wonderful job. So I know the kind of work that you've gone through. So for that, I want to say thank you very much. And then especially this year when you honor Betty. And I think that was such a wonderful, nice thing, because I know the Northside, I got it right this time, didn't I? Northside Strippers Quilt Club meant a lot to Betty. It was her golf. You know, like golf is to me. This was her thing, and she really loved being with the ladies, enjoying trying. It was a challenge to her because it gave her something to work for. She'd love to go to meetings and then be able to get back so she could start work on it, and then all at once she'd call on me to try to decide on, now let's see, was this, I said, I think maybe we go see Judy Herzog or Shirley or Joanne. We get this thing straightened out, you know, and you people worked with her so well, and she enjoyed it so very, very much. And we accomplished a lot of things. I started working with her when I retired because it was kind of fun to do, helped her do some cutting, and she did all the sewing. And then we did a lot of projects for various groups, you know, that would help them. I mean, she had like wall hangings or quilts or things like this that she helped to give not only to the families, but out to like the church, PEO, other organizations in town that I think there was is there a nest group for late? She did some things for blankets, for helping little, you know, she liked doing this sort of thing. So to honor her today and during this quilt show, I'm very thankful. I appreciate it very, very much.
I just want to say something. Ron gave me her quilter's legacy, and I looked through it. And this would make us all jealous because she has all the quilts that she made, pictorial stories about them, what they cost. And I was telling Linda that I found 2 of mine in here that she bought, finished, and donated to, one to the church and one to PEO.
Yeah.
So maybe we can inspire us quilters to do this.
She enjoyed doing things like this. She did a lot.
Oh.
She was always very much organized to be sure and write things down. Get some sort of a diary of that, right? Wouldn't you say, Linda?
So we thank you, Ron.
Well, thank you very, very much. We appreciate it.
Helping us with this. We're going to start our tour this year with 2 of Betty's quilts. Linda just told me that she and Betty bought this fabric while they were in Texas, and one of Betty's favorite flowers was the sunflower, and it's a stack and whack, and see the sunflowers on the back? This is a quilt that Betty entered in our block challenge 2 years ago, and she won 12 of the blocks, and has it put together for all the members that entered. And so,
this is our club's fundraiser quilt this year. The pattern is called October Sky, and we think it is just gorgeous. It's queen size. The funds that are raised for this quilt will be donated to the two local causes, or two local events, the Jefferson County Fairgrounds Capital Improvements Fund, as well as the Jefferson County Hospital's Foundation Mammogram Program for women who cannot afford to have mammograms on their own power.
This is a challenge that our club had this year, and we called it the Liver Challenge because it was a piece of fabric that Joanne had at the shop, and it was just darn ugly. So that's the challenge, was to put it in there were no rules other than you had to use the fabric, and I think these 6 quilts are just, we did have a pattern, and they had to use either all or part of the pattern. And Shirley's quilt on the very last over there is pretty much like the pattern, hers and Jane's. But I think they did really well for us this year.
Let us do that. The quilts you're looking at here are the quilts made by our Kay Beach, our judge for this year. The one is a pictorial story of her family, her husband's family, and then their family together of children and grandchildren. The quilt in the middle with the cats is a round robin in which several people participate. Kay and her friend Jane Idle made all the cats shown on the quilt. And the third quilt is a challenge fabric that Judy talked about just a minute ago, that you are given a fabric to use and you're challenged to make something pretty out of it. And the challenge fabric was this little floral print, and this was done in 1992. It's really quite pretty, and she does all her hand quilting, and it's gorgeous.
We're going to show you this little row of baby quilts here. These first 2 are kind of special because they were made for the Bowman twins. This is for Britain. Is that right? And this is for Blair. Double Irish chain made by Peg Johnson. Now, if you see a white tag on the quilt, that means it was a not judged quilt. And if you see a blue tag on the quilt, it means it was judged, and that's entirely at the discretion of the maker. This little pinwheel quilt here was made by Renee Coberly for her new granddaughter Ava, and she's from Ottumwa, and it's a blue ribbon winner. And we have Roly Poly Circus Animals by Doris Shilb. Look at those tiny little prairie points around the edge. This is made for Chase Lamb, and this is by Peg Johnson, red ribbon winner. Look at the airplanes, match the airplanes in the sashing. This one is made by Pauline Coberly for her new granddaughter, Ava. And Shirley and I got to hold Ava the other day. What a cute little thing, 11 days old. Barbara Roberts, cat quilts. Look at those calico cats. Appliqué. Here's a treasure found by Linda Clements for $1. We all screamed at her when she found it at a garage sale. Isn't it sweet? Little cross-stitch cowboy and Indian baby quilt. And then she quilted it. She just found the top, or the kit, I guess. Was it partially done, Shirley? Do you remember that? Okay. Anyway. This quilt is made by Marjorie Messer, and it's quilted by Cora Kneer. And the quilting is absolutely wonderful. It's 63 years old, and it is, I wonder if it isn't her baby quilt. Is that right, Shirley?
Her daughter's.
Her daughter's baby quilt. Okay. But the embroidery and the quilting is absolutely wonderful. And Peg Johnson has gone fishing here. Look at these little fish bowls full of critters. And she not only has fish bowls full of critters, she has Can the Bugs here. Going Buggy by Peg Johnson. It's paper pieced, and she said she had so much fun that even her older daughter got in the mix in trying to find fabrics that she could can up. These next two quilts are made by Ruth Johnson, and she has done all the quilting on her little sewing machine. And this one is called Sea Life, and she has quilted in here fish that you wouldn't believe. There's fish everywhere. It is really exquisite. Can you see those at all? Little dolphins, mostly. And I don't know, this little, whatever, that jellyfish thing, and it's really quite cute. And then this one is also by Ruth, and she's quilted around these little partridges, and she calls this one Partridge in Periwinkle. Isn't that a cool name? Well, yeah, it says right there, Partridge in Periwinkle, made by Ruth Johnson, 2002. Now, what do you think of this? If you have lace doilies you don't know what to do with. Ruth Johnson, Strawberry Parfait. And again, she's quilted these. But what a great use of lace doilies, instead of having them gather dust in your drawer. I especially like this one. Louise Gillespie embroidered the blocks, and then Joy quilted it. And the border is wonderful because she has quilted rosebuds and roses in the border to kind of tie it together to the rest of the quilt. Quite nice. Penny Hores Fat Quarter Shuffle. I'd like to see her do this little shuffle sometime in her kitchen, but that's really, really cute. She has a wonderful eye for color. This is also a fat quarter shuffle with Penny, and her quilting in this one, she uses the lid of her garbage can to get her started for her quilting lines, and she used a double needle in it. So it's really, really quite attractive. Marge Russell made this one, and it's a scrapaholic, and she calls it 9/11 scrapaholic because she started it on September 11th. So she finished it in March of 2002. This quilt is by Carol Jones, and it looks just like Carol, soft and pretty. And she says, I especially love the soft tones and imagine it in an impressionistic view of sky, flowers, and sunlight with a soft, warm wind.
This quilt was made by Peg Johnson and her family for her mother, Shirley Johnson, and the quilt name is Mother's Memories, and it's all things about their family. Peg's comment says, Mom passed away on August 7th, 2001, but not without knowing how much she was loved. She says, we got together and we worked on this, and it took less than 8 weeks to finish. It's a very lovely tribute. The next quilt is made by Doris Shelb. She's titled it Pioneer Sampler, and it's from a Block of the Month book by Eleanor Burns. In the centers of some of these blocks, she's put in some little spatial features. This was made by Dina Pesch for her husband on their 25th anniversary. He's an avid bird watcher, and she said the eagles in these blocks commemorate the many Sundays crossing the Des Moines River on our way to Sunday Fellowship, and we all have enjoyed watching the eagles over the years. Sharon Brown made this quilt, and it's called Confetti. the pieces were collected in a Millennium Fabric Exchange on the internet in the year 2000. The print pieces are from other quilters from all around the world, and she said it was one of the most exciting experiences she's had to find all these fabrics in the mail from all over the world. Turned out real pretty. This quilt was made by Dina Pash and Sylvia Fredericks, and it was made for Mary Rubus, and the quilt is all about chickens. They just called it Mary's Chicken Quilt. Mary had raised chickens during her early high school years, in early teen years, and they decided that they ought to just give her a chicken quilt as a memory of the cat on the pillow sham at the very, very top is to commemorate Mary's cat, and I think the name is Ruby. This quilt is called Boston Commons, and it will be auctioned in Mount Pleasant as a fundraiser for the Methodist Church. It was made by the ladies and the quilters of the United Methodist Church in Fairfield. Members of the Good Cheer Society made this in 1976 to celebrate the U.S. Bicentennial. And the Neighborhood Club was founded in 1906 by a group of farm homemakers as a charitable organization. The members embroidered the name of every lady that had ever been a member on blocks, and Vilma Pewter quilted it. And so some of the members still around are Maisie Messer, Maisie Hollander, Doris Johnson, Marilyn Stone, Ruth Jenks, and Marjorie Messer.
This quilt is by Wilma Hootman, her first quilt. We as quilters think we need every new gadget that there is on the market. She quilted this with a thimble, needle thread, and her picnic table. So there you go, quilters.
This is one of our Award of Excellence winners. This quilt was made by Frances Parrott. It was pieced and quilted by Frances, and it's lovely, lovely work. Great color choices. It's a gorgeous quilt. It definitely deserves the award.
Shirley, when she was making this, she said she made the inside background and then she ran out of fabric. So, you know, we quilters, we panic, but I think she did a wonderful job matching that outside background.
Definitely, definitely.
This is a scrap quilt made by Doris Schilb. She had all these scraps, and she said, I need a quilt to make it of. She found the pattern dancing triangles in a quilt magazine. So, little inspiration for you with all your little stash of scraps. This is kind of a family quilt. This quilt was embroidered in 1983 by Carl, Marjorie, and Carol Messer, and then quilted by the Lutheran quilters, and then Carol bound it. It's a cross-stitch pattern. It's quite lovely. Here's a quilt by Jane Loris. She wanted a nice bright quilt, Harvest of Stars. It was on a calendar. No pattern, so she just looked at the picture and made up the design. I think she did a great job. The next three quilts are quite a story. Kathy Gook. I took a class from Shirley and I on how to make a lover's knot, and boy, we turned her on. She's made 10 of them. This one is for her son, Jacob. This is number 10. And it's all sports and cars and stuff. What, Shirley?
The end.
Oh, yeah, she said this is the end. This one is for, oh shoot, I forgot. Her daughter, she has 5 daughters. And this one is number 3, and the blue one is number 5. So she made one for her mom, one for her, one for a friend. If you'd gotten in line, she'd made one for you. This is a special little quilt. The last year that Joanne was in business, Shirley and I made these little blocks, and we would drag them around wherever we went and have people sign it. And then we put it all together so when she leaves for Texas, she can take this little memory with her. The sewing room was started in June of '89, and she closed it in December of 2000. Deb Bulow loves the sea, saw this pattern and said she loved everything about it except the shark. And if you see this little fin right here, see, there's her shark in the ocean waves. Irene Hoagland took a class from Shirley and I on the stack and whack, and she got turned on, and she turned on the ladies down south. And this is her second stack and whack, and I think she said there were 9 ladies that made it down in Hillsborough country. Tina Silverio made a quilt for her son. And this is the 3rd quilt made from that sampler class. And Jane Loris, Oriental Red Quilt. She said she never made a red quilt, and so she did. This quilt is by Darlene Andrietta. She started it in '94, and in 2 years it was a quilt top, and then she had it hand quilted. It's a double Irish chain. It's really quite nice. Sometimes we need those projects that span the calendar a little bit. This is made by Chelsea Keller, of course, The Little Mermaid, and she made it for, she loves it, for her 3-year-old cousin Shelby, who loves Little Mermaid. Jane Loris, Snail's Trail. This was a class she took from Claudine Hanson that we had down here. I love Jane's colors.
Jane's always good with bright colors. And she really makes them work. This is her stack and slash. And she read this in a magazine and said, oh, I think I can do that, but I don't know how to do it, but I'll try it anyway. And it turned out just smashing.
This is a quilt I'm pretty proud of. My 12-year-old granddaughter made this. She went through my stash, and I cut them out because I didn't trust her, that rotary cutter, because I'm not the nurse that these other girls are. And she put it all together, and she loved picking out the pieces. And then she picked out the border, and then my sister Irma quilted it. But she had quite a time. It's on her bed. I had to snatch it to put it in the show. Whitney Carnahan's her name. This is Mysterious Circles, Penny Hores. Her new book is coming out shortly, but she did this one all in plaids. I think that's just quite stunning. This is a quilt I've even slept under. Joanne, the last year she was in business, every new fabric that came in the shop, she cut a 6-inch square. And my sister Carolyn bought a bundle of these squares, and this is all made out of that fabric, except the sashing, of course. And I love it because it starts green, goes blue, goes down to red for the coloration. That's an Ohio Star. The same sister picked out this fabric for Vi Winter to make this broken star log cabin. She loves that lime green, and Vi loves red, so there you go. This quilt is for sale. My sister Shirley made this one, a 9/11 quilt, and the fabric around the border depicts Washington, D.C., the city skyline, and New York City skyline. So it's her commemorative quilt for the 9/11 disaster. And this quilt is her garden trellis, and it's actually a stack and whack, only it's only cut 4 times instead of the 6 or 8 that we normally do. And I think the whole quilt top, she got a bargain here, cost her $23.
The quilts that you're going to see next are going to look fairly similar because they're all made from this, pretty much from the same fabric. Each quilt maker was privileged to choose a few pieces of her own to put in with it, but the Timeless Treasures Company donates a portion of this price of each yard of fabric to cancer research. This pattern is called the Stack and Slash, and this was made by Kay Livingston. This one is made by Kay's sister, Rosalie Kickbush. It's a little brighter. She's put extra pink in with hers. We teased her about that thing glowing in the dark in the closet. She'd never need a light to get in there. This is made by Lou Kemple, and it's another one of the Quilt for the Cure fabrics. The next one is made by Judy Herzog. She thought some of that pink was a little too bright, but she used it. You can almost see it in a few of her blocks. This one is made by Elizabeth Johnson. She's 12 years old, and she made this for her friend Kelly, who is also a cancer survivor. And Elizabeth and Kelly share a real special friendship, and Elizabeth made this as a surprise for Kelly.
Don't tell anybody.
Yeah, well, yeah, don't tell Kelly. I think she's seen it though, Judy. Okay, this one is made by Shirley Peterman. It is the same Quilt for the Cure fabric. The quilts you had just seen were all this year's fabric. The year before, the fabric was this, and this was made by Penny Bryant. Well, this is the one that I made, and it's obvious that I like green. I found more ways to use green. And here's yet one more. This last one is made by Joyce Kopecky. It is a stack and slash. This quilt was made by Rosalie Kickbush. It is another stack and whack, and it's really quite pretty, and it is also for sale. Frances Parrott made this quilt. She didn't even want to put it in the show. She didn't think it was done very well, but I think it's rather pretty. She's used a special kind of leading to get this stained glass. It's actually fabric, and she said it's the most expensive quilt she's ever made, largely because of that lame leading, this black stuff. And she said after she was done with it, she realized she learned some techniques that would have been much easier than the way she made it. We think it's quite pretty, though. This is a block of the month quilt made by Shirley Peterman. They all had the same blocks, but then they personalized it by creating their own kinds of sashings. This is pretty nice.
This is a stack and whack made by Vi Winter, and Shirley talked to me and she said, oh, Vi needs some more of this fabric, and oh, you know us quilters, I had a little bit in my stash, so I gave her 3 yards and she wants more. So if anybody has this fabric, Vi Winters would be a candidate for it. It's a wonderful quilt, also for sale. This quilt is a copy of a quilt of my great-grandmother's that Carolyn and Shirley and I remade, and hers was all navy blue, but we put extra color in ours, but quilted by Vi Winter. It's just a stunning thing with a rainbow border.
This next group of quilts was in inspiration of Sharon Brown for our quilt club. She saw this pattern on TV and she said, I thought that was so cute and so much fun. Let's get together on a Saturday and let's work on this. So most of our club got together and we've all started. Now we actually were able to hang 4 finished quilts. There may be some nearly finished ones, and I know there's quite a few in parts in boxes some in our members' homes. This one, first one, belongs to Edith Graby. Edith hasn't been quilting very long, but she sure does a nice job. The next one was one I made. My snowmen had a big attitude problem. The third one in line is Marge Russell's. Marge was, I think, maybe the first of our group to finish hers. And we said, oh no, Marge has raised the bar again. We've got to keep up. The last one is Peg Johnson's, and it was, you can see the different choices of backgrounds make these quilts all look so different, and the faces are different. People have, it's fun to see the different interpretations people take off of the same pattern. This next quilt is a sampler, a pink and purple. It was made by Barbara Roberts, and it was created for her daughter, Pam Osman. Mm-hmm. And Barbara created over 20 quilts, and she made her first quilt when she was 53, and she averaged 2 queen-size quilts a year. And none of her quilts were finished by machine. And due to ill health, she quit her handwork in '94 and passed away in February of 1998.
You saw Shirley Peterman's Block of the Month. This is Rosalie Kickbush's Block of the Month, and you can see what a different sashing does to those very same blocks, very same fabrics. Rosalie quilted that. The next one is by Linda Clements, and she told her sister she could have it because she didn't like it when she was making it. Then she got it all done, and she said, whoa, I didn't want to give it away, but she did. She said, I can visit it whenever I like. It was wonderful little hand quilting in there. Linda does her own. Rosalie Kickbush, Snowball 9-patch, and Rosalie does her own quilting, and that's her 2000 quilt. You notice the fabric in it, red, white, and blue, and the fabric is all 2000. Margot Van Strohuber, is that right? She bought this little quilt up in Kelowna, and she didn't like part of it, so she just kind of peeled some away, added her own, and then she quilted it. Isn't it a sweet little thing? There are 20 little squares in that one square. Little calicos, they look like little 50s prints. Really cute. The next one is by Fran Parrott. She took this class from Doreen Speckman, and it's Doreen Speckman's Peaky and Spike. And Doreen, of course, has since deceased, but quite a smashing quilt. Shelley Moore made Starry Night for her son, 7-year-old Cole. Got the little moons and stars around here. Here's a quilt pieced by Carolyn Copeman She calls it Kaleidos Star. Her mother-in-law wanted to make a quilt for every grand person. And Carolyn says, that's fine, I'll piece it, but you choose one color and then I'll do the rest. And I think she did a great job.
This quilt is a very old pattern. It's called double 9-patch or 9-patch of 9 patches. All the fabric in here is reproductions of Civil War era fabrics. It was all available at Joanne's store, but it was fun to use the old fabric reproductions in an old pattern. And it was made very contemporary by the use of instead of just a solid block of fabric, we have pieced backgrounds, and that gives it a very contemporary look. I made this quilt. And Sylvia and Sarah, her daughter, Sylvia Fredericks and her daughter Sarah, made this quilt, and it was called Log Cabin Under the Stars.
This little quilt here, I was in Kansas City and saw this contest and with the St. Jude Hospital, and you were to make a quilt using dreams as a theme. And this is a technique I'd never used before, but it's made with crayons, and you color it, and then you press the crayons, and I just put a little crayon back on it to remind us that that's the technique we used. Pictures from a book my husband had, I think maybe in the 40s, that I reproduced on there. I thought those little kids would have this kind of a dream.
The quilting in the sashing?
Yeah, I quilted in the sashing. I put joy and love and dreams and kisses and hope and smiles. This is Joanne Fritz's St. Mary Field Star. She has quite an excellent eye for color. It is a design by my sister Carolyn and quilted by Vi Winter. This next little quilt is made by Renee Colberly, yellow and blue stars with that little applique border. Is just really sweet. Anyone who's made a double wedding ring knows that it is a lesson in endurance. I really like the results. It's mine, and it's quilted by Vi Winter. Next one's also mine. It's a garden trellis. It was put in a box for a while, and finally got it out, and Vi quilted it. And so I could hang it in a show. Next one is a quilt that we made for Joanne when she had, what surgery was that? Gallbladder surgery. Instead of sending flowers, we pieced this quilt for her. And she had picked out the fabric for this quilt for another project, and then we just cut double. And she was very surprised when she got this quilt because it was one she meant for somebody else, but it was actually for her. This little quilt is so cute. Irene Crow is the owner of this, and these little Lemoyne stars are hand-pieced, and they look like they're 3-inch finished. She found these by her great-grandmother, pieced the little stars, and then Irene put them together into the quilt. But those are wonderful little stars. Shirley Peterman's 9-patch on point. She had this all hand quilted, and she loves them wrinkled, so she threw it in the washer and the dryer, pulled it out, and the red had bled. So she took spray and wash, sprayed it on it, threw it back in the washer, and pulled it out of the dryer, and it was gone. Someone was smiling on her that day, I think. Okay, Judy Hinshaw embroidered the blocks in January of 2000, and it's for her granddaughter Lily. And she has lilies in the border. That's why she chose that fabric. Joanne Fritz pieced this one, Boston Commons, quilted by Rosalie Kickbush. Nice job. This quilt has really special meaning to me and to the members of the Quilt Guild. Betty took this class from me. She and her daughter took it. And after she was gone, Ron called me up and said, Judy, we need help. And so Betty's sister Judy came over and we figured this quilt out, and Sudie helped piece it together, and the name of it's Hunter's Star, and it's a treasure for Ron. It got a viewer's choice, plus a red ribbon. Here you go, Shirley.
This is Linda Clemens' quilt. She received these blocks because she won the viewer's choice block contest, and one of the winners then gets to pick and choose out of the blocks. And this is her her end result. The quilt right next to it is also from the same contest, the same fabric, and these were won by Penny Hores. And you can just be amazed to look at these two quilts side by side and say, yeah, they came from the same fabric, but they sure don't look a thing alike. Jane Loris made this quilt. She took a class from Judy and I, and she said, I just decided I wanted a golden quilt. And here's Jane's incredible use of color again. She has a golden quilt, and wait until I show you the back. Gold satin, no less. What a fun way to finish a quilt. This quilt was made by Judy Herzog and quilted by her sister Irma, and it belongs to Joanne Fritz. It's a very traditional pattern, and radiant squares. Yeah, radiant squares. It looks a little bit like a trip around the world, but it's actually called radiant squares. Irene Hoagland took a class and used this really pretty green, pink, and gold floral fabric to make a stack and whack. And so she's the one that carried this information to the Hillsborough ladies, and they all took off on stack and whack quilts. Irene's blocks are so pretty. Trudy Oliver made this quilt, and it's for her daughter Lauren, and she also has 3 pillow shams that match it. It's really sweet. It looks just perfect for a little girl's bed. Lauren probably wouldn't like it. I bet she doesn't think of herself as a little girl anymore. This is Trudy Oliver's Evening in Ireland quilt. It has a very pretty border on it, and Trudy says, this is my first and possibly last effort of a pieced border. She said, I had no idea of how much time it would take, but it sure looks nice on there. This quilt was made for and is owned by Angela Dunbar, the granddaughter of Barbara Roberts, and Barbara Roberts totally hand quilted this piece. This is all applique, and I think it is a major accomplishment. What a pretty quilt.
This quilt is Snow Buddies. It's a pattern by Possibilities that I put together. And we see the ribbons hanging on the quilts, and I just want to make one little comment. I put this in the Iowa State Fair, got a blue ribbon, put it in another fair, did not even get a ribbon. And this time I got a ribbon, so I'm happy again. But it's a calendar of snowmen. So it was fun to do. Judy Hinshaw made this quilt for Kelsey to take on the bus for her when she put a little flannel on the back so she could cuddle up on the bus and go to her ball trips. Marcel Brown from, where's Marcel from? Mediapolis. Did this quilt in steps. It's really sweet. It's called Medley Opus 1, and she learned all kinds of techniques doing this quilt. She did a great job.
This quilt was made by Estella Persinger Ward, and it was the great-great-grandmother that made this friendship quilt during the Depression, probably in the 30s, and she lived around Rushville. It's very old. There's some what might have been feed sack material in here. It's appliqued by hand, and signatures on here. Yes, it looks like looks like a real treasured heirloom. It's very pretty. This is owned by Edith Myers. It's a
made by her mother.
Oh, it's made by her mother.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Made by her mother, and she doesn't know who quilted it, but it's a Dresden plate, and she thought it was made about 1980. It's a pretty,
all three of these are.
pretty bright quilt. Here's another bright one that was made by Edith Myers' mother, Velna Paxton. This is called Pinwheel, 1985. And this one is made by Velna Paxton, and it's the bow tie quilt, and it's textured. The knots in the bows are loose. Well, they're not loose, but they're so constructed that you can get your finger in the edge of it. The next quilt is pretty spectacular. It's called Carousel Horse for the obvious reasons. It looks like a carousel. This belongs to and was made by Frances Parrott. Frances has a great sense of humor. She said, "This quilt is entirely pieced, no applique. The cutting instructions took up more than 2 pages of small print. It was from a book by Pambono. And every little piece had its own number. It was kept in a small plastic bag." And the quilt was stippled by Virginia Beck. She says, one of my granddaughters will get this, and that is after I get another one made. There must be 2 granddaughters in contention for this quilt. This is Carol Jones' pictorial quilt, a gift to the Lance family, and it captures family members at play, even including the dog. And we have a quilt by Shirley Peterman. She said she and her friend made these quilts, and 1 year later it's a finished project. I thought 1 year would be a pretty astounding finish time for a project, but she seemed to think it took a long time. I can't imagine. It's very pretty. Pansies, purple pansies.
This quilt is made by Florence Stevens, and she calls it Aunt Susie's quilt because it was tucked away, and when she moved to Fairfield, she finally got out and said, "I'm going to use it." So it's in her home. It's a cross-stitch piece. It's very nice. This quilt you may see more of. It's going to be on the front of Penny's book, Sewing in Circles, which will be out in November, we're hoping, 2002. Carol Jones' Jewel Box. That's a stretch from her other quilt we saw in the beginning of the show. All those nice soft colors. Well, she's brightened them up here a little bit. Peg Johnson, this is her little butterfly quilt, really sweet. Created for my daughter's graduation from college in 1999. sewing in circles, and notice the border on that one. Altered edge with piping. Penny Hores. Karen Culper, Thimbleberries pumpkin pattern. Precise work, wonderful.
This is a quilt that was a Thimbleberries pattern, I believe, and it doesn't look like the Thimbleberries colors that we're used to seeing. This is very contemporary. It's all shades of green. I thought it was kind of a Christmas quilt with the pine cone, pine cones and needles in it. The next quilt is Barbara Roberts made this for her granddaughter, Angie Dunbar, for her wedding. Ranny Martin made the quilt she calls Summer Sherbet for me. She always wanted a nice crisp quilt for her bed, so she made this one, and it was the only quilt that she hasn't given away that she has made. It is it's very pretty, and it was also a winner of the Award of Excellence.
You've seen this design before, October Sky, just like our club quilt. Karen Culper made this, except she did needle turn applique on her geese, and it was quilted by Vi Winter. What a stunning quilt. Award of Excellence winner. Season's Greetings by Shirley Thompson, a pattern she had seen in a magazine. There are 72 different red fabrics in there. She said she had to dig a little deeper to find those. Joanne Fritz, North by North. She picked out the fabrics, and a bunch of us created this quilt. She has a wonderful eye for color. Quilted by Winter. This is a quilt by Karen Harris, 13 different stars. She quilted it on her sewing machine and did what we call back to front quilting. These little designs in here are actually on the back of the quilt, and if you turn the quilt over, you'll see those little curlicues, and she just quilted those and therefore resulted in the quilting design on the front. We're jumping into a few antique quilts here. This one is owned by Doris Schilb, and it's called a double bit axe. And if you'll notice, it's like the axe head. If the design is this big, it is called a double bit axe. If it's smaller, you've seen it maybe called an apple core. All those nice little scrappy things. It's wonderful. I think Doris feed sack material, obviously. This little quilt is owned by Nancy Crow, and it has a wonderful story. Each one of these little squares is a tobacco sack that was bleached and then embroidered and then made into a quilt. And this is a summer quilt because there's no batting in it. It's just a front and a back. And they use these in the porches in the summer to stay cool. We figure it's about circa 1900. Double wedding ring owned by Judy Hinshaw is made either by her mother or great-grandmother. The double wedding ring pattern came into vogue or into history about 1920. And then in the 30s it became very, very popular. But it was an old takeoff of the pickle dish pattern. This one is baskets for 1940 or 50. Piece baskets. Looks like old shirting material. And the last one is made by Rebecca Foreman, and it's given to Myron Wormley, and it's a double Irish chain, which is another old pattern in the early 1800s. Let's see if they know. 1920s, perhaps. We're going to continue now with the smaller part of our show, Northside Stripers Quilt Show. It's called Quilt Show 2002 at the Jefferson County Fairgrounds in Fairfield. And these are the smaller quilts, what we call wall quilts or etc. This first one is Card Tricks, and if you remember, I gave some of this fabric to Vi Winter. Well, this is all she let me have, and I call it Christmas cards. This is an exercise in Penny's new book called Mysterious Circles. And this one, if you'll notice, the shape is a little different. These are ovals instead of circles. Mysterious ovals. Here's another one of Penny's fat quarter shuffles. A do-re-mi. It's all got a little music in it. Jane Loris paper pieced these houses. She calls them Halloween houses. Aren't those just cute? She said, I'll tell you a secret. She says some of the paper is still inside, even though it's quilted. This is a bunny made by Fran Parrott. She said, in a fit of stupidity, I decided to make a binding on the upper ear a different color than the rest of the binding. Bad call. Those injunctions were something else. Amazing what a hammer can do to smooth out a rough place. Try it sometime. This is called Swirls by Penny Hores. Doesn't that have a lot of motion to it? It's wonderful. This is a little table runner that I designed, and it was a disaster. I tell you, we had a tough time with it, but some people took it and enjoyed it. Penny finished it for me in a class. Here is simply circles with little embroidered little inserts, really sweet little things. Machine embroidery. Trudy Oliver entered this next one. It's the third through fifth graders at the First Baptist Church, and it's their September 11th commemorative quilt with all their handprints. It's really sweet. This is by Mary Larson, called a Raggy Flag. That's the very first quilt class she's taken. Marge Russell, red, white, and blue. She got the scraps at the Amana and made this throw from the scraps.
This little baby quilt was made by Karen Harris and quilted by Karen Harris for her son's friend's first child. She says it's obviously been well used. It's a nice little flannel. Looks nice and cozy. Joe Fritz made this quilt in mysterious ovals. It's part of the pattern that Penny's book of sewing in circles. Karen Culper, baby, it's cold outside. She said she thought the pattern was cute for a winter wall quilt, and I would agree. She did their own quilting on it too. Doris Shilb made this charm apple core. Charm means that there are no two pieces alike in the quilt, and sometimes that can be a bit of an adventure. It's a lot of fun hunting up those pieces to focus on in a quilt. Penny Hores had all these old hankies laying around, like most of us do, trying to figure out what to do with them, and she said, I'm just going to make a quilt with them. And what a clever use of old hankies. She stitched around each one so all the little scallopy edges are held down, but it's just so nice and flat. What a pretty thing. I think I'll try to make one of those. This is Marge Russell's signature quilt. It was started this project in 2000, and now it's finished in 2002. The blocks were made by different people and signed, and then given back to the person who had submitted blocks also to be in the project. Linda Heaton made this quilt and quilted it. It's called Tranquility Bay, and isn't it pretty? This is the quilt that Diane Sullivan made, called Spinning Circles. The pattern is designed by Penny Hores for her Sewing in Circles book. This is another quilt by Doris Shelb. It's got Iowa 100 years ago, and it was a contest piece that she made, and she actually won 3rd place. Pansies in the Snow are made by Deb Bulow. She pieced this during the 15-inch snowstorm of April of 1997. Pansies in the Snow. This is Penny Horace's quilt called Mysterious Circles. It's also in her book Sewing in Circles. Simply Circles Clowns by Penny Horace. And this she calls Simply Circles. It's also from her book. I don't know how many of these will be pictured in her book, but she has several different ways of doing this sewing in circles business, and has made a lot of quilts just to demonstrate the technique and how it's done. Lots of bugs and jars there.
This is called Spray of Roses by Jean DeMoss. She does absolutely wonderful Brazilian embroidery, and that's what that's all about. It's wonderful.
Viewer's choice.
Viewer's choice. Yes, viewer's choice and Award of Excellence. This next quilt is a pattern by, who did this? Maggie Walker. Yeah, same one that did the chickens. And I had to change this dog down here because there was a golden retriever there, but this is my sister's dog, Sheba, that died, so we had to put Sheba in this dog quilt. Carolyn's also making one.
Let's show you the back.
Oh, yeah, the back. Yeah. A few dogs back there.
Okay.
Darlene Andrietta did this one, and she said she pieced it in a 98 and hung over the banister, and finally she said she wanted this on her wall, and then when she got it done, it was too bright to hang on the wall, and she was afraid of the light, so she's now hanging over her banister, but it's done. This is Penny Horace's Hawaiian Sampler. She wanted to try some Hawaiian quilting. Did I get that right, Shirley? Mm-hmm. Okay. Mysterious Ovals from Penny Horace. Hole in the Barn Door from Doris Schill. Mysterious Circles from Doris Schill. This is a Poinsettia Holly runner from Jean DeMoss. Wonderful, wonderful applique person. We just have a little myriad here of wall quilts and table runners, and made by Darlene Andrietta, Suzanne Warmley, Doris Schilb, Teresa Silverio, Ruth Johnson did this wonderful hummingbird. Joy Gillespie has some paper pieced flowers.
Here are some more of Penny Hores' spinning circles. And this is Ruth Johnson's, and I think this is the cutest thing. She didn't want it judged, and I don't know why. It's really cute. A big sunburst called Glory, done by Linda Heaton. And this is Judy Herzog's Rose, and she's got something really stunning on the back. It's silk. She was challenged to use this with her sisters, a group of them, and she had to use this on the front, so she made a little tiny piping. Judy's pretty good at that. Linda Heaton has made this pretty colorful quilt. She says it has no name, but it sure is cute. She's got a lot of embellishments on it. Suzanne Wormley made this pretty spring wall heiling. She said it was a kit. Isn't it pretty? Oh, this is cute. This is Deb Bulow's daughter's Rachel. And when she was 3, she designed this quilt from scraps that had fallen on the floor. And so Deb just ironed them on, and there's Rachel's house. What a cute idea. Here's another rose made by Judy Herzog, and this one is done in the ovals of Penny Hores' new book, Sewing in Circles. Deb Bulow made Halloween Moon. She said she did it a couple years ago and really was fun. I bet this is paper piece. This is really cute. Look at the spines on that cat's back. That'd be tedium at its finest if it weren't paper piecing. Another Mysterious Circles from Penny Hores' project. This one is Spinning in Circles. This has a lot of old fabric on it. I know that. I made it. This one is Sharon Brown's Simply Circles. Penny's. Sharon doesn't usually work with colors quite this vivid, so this was a real stretch for her. But isn't it cute? She used the little jungle animal motif. This work is Carolyn Koopman's Country Journal. It's another Maggie Walker design, the same as the person who designed the dogs we just saw. Carolyn changed the pattern a little bit and turned it all green because she likes green. Look on the back of it. Chickens. Who would have thought? And then here's another piece of Jean DeMoss's excellent, excellent work. And she calls this Fanning a New Millennium. She has used millennium print fabric and has made this wonderful fan. She does this beautiful handwork. It's just stunning. It was another Award of Excellence winner.
Okay, the American Quilter Society invited its authors from the first 16 years of publishing books to create a quilt in the spirit of hope and healing for a traveling exhibit. It will travel for 3 years all over the United States, and 50 authors responded. And they have 2 exhibits, 25 in each exhibit, and we have one of the exhibits here at our show. And one of my quilts, because I am an author for American Quilter Society, is in the show. I gotta find it. Here it is. No? Yes. It's down here. Right here's mine. And mine is called Betsy's Flag. And it says, Stars and Stripes have become part of the greatest symbols of freedom found around the world. As hearts were breaking on September 11th, and we prayed for hope and healing, our flag was there, symbolizing the unity and strength of our nation. And the name of my book is going to be Sewing in Circles. There's another really neat one over here with all the names of the people that perished. Maybe They're all very special, but this is especially interesting because it has the 3,000 names on it of the people that perished. Okay.
As Richard shows you the rest of these quilts, I'd just like to thank you for going on this tour with us, our Quilt Show 2002, and perhaps in 2 years we'll see you again.